Well, hello there everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Space Cowboy here with another video for you guys here today. And we got another Cowboys victory in the books by a final score of 41-35 in a nail-biter and shootout at home. The Cowboys are victorious. They move to 9-3 and get a crucial win in the NFC playoff picture as they've solidified themselves as the 5th seed, but more importantly, they are alive for the division title. This was a huge game for the Cowboys, and we understood the circumstances. You have a team that is in the playoff picture coming to town. They weren't going to back down because they understood the assignment. Hey, we need to win this game because we have a tough stretch coming down. And for the Cowboys, it's kind of the same thing, but the Cowboys have a little bit more of a lead that they can afford to have cushion with. But it didn't matter. Geno Smith and those guys came to play, and even with how well Geno Smith was playing and the fact that neither team punted, it's the 5th game in NFL history where neither team punted, they still could not get it done. You know, the Cowboys had trouble defensively throughout the entire game up until the very end where we got 4 stops on 4th down. And so people talk about Deron Bland and him getting picked on. Did he have a great night? No, I don't think so. However, Donovan Wilson was responsible for allowing the touchdown at the beginning of the game for Seattle. And then you look at how things were going. They could not get to Geno Smith whatsoever, basically. And it was a pain, man. It was a real pain in the ass. However, where I will give the defense its flowers is it stepped up when it needed to. And I kind of looked at it in parallel to the 2020 Seattle Seahawks game where our defense, all it needed to do was get 1 stop when we took the lead, and it couldn't. And so it was the opposite of that where, sure, it was still a shootout. We were doing our thing, but the Cowboys were able to get a stop defensively to close the game out. Now, there was like, oh my God, McCarthy, why are you throwing the ball? And why did you not go for 2 here? In hindsight, we can overlook these things, but had we lost this game, everybody would have been looking at that. So we're going to look at the stat sheet, how everybody did, and then we'll talk about the ebbs and flow of the game to really get an understanding of why I wasn't upset with certain things, or maybe why I was upset with a couple other things. So let's go ahead and get into that. So Dak Prescott, 29 for 41, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. He was sacked 4 times for a passer rating of 115.8. Go over to Geno Smith, 23 of 41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, all to DK Metcalf, an interception, and he wasn't sacked at all, with a passer rating of 97 even. Going into the rushing stats, the Cowboys had 136 rushing yards. The leader there was Tony Pollard, and he did have a touchdown in this game. And then you go to CeeDee Lamb, who had the big, the 24-yard carry at the very end to kind of get the Cowboys some more room to work with. And then you look at how the Seahawks did, 72 yards rushing, and so they weren't able to run the ball really at all, except in certain instances. And then you go over to the receiving game. CeeDee Lamb, 12 receptions, 116 yards with a touchdown. Jake Ferguson, huge game for him, 6 receptions, 77 yards and a touchdown. And then Brandin Cooks, 4 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. The interesting thing is you see where the targets are going to, and, you know, with Michael Gallup, he only had 1 target in the entire game, so it's really showing that, you know, when you're kind of seeing how they're trying to do things, of course, it's a game-by-game basis, but I talked about this, and many other content creators or people on Twitter, you name it, we've talked about how you need to give the ball to CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and Brandin Cooks, really. Those are your 3 dudes. And they're starting to do that a lot more, and they're showing up and showing out. On Seattle's end of things, you have DK Metcalf, 6 receptions, 134 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then JSN, 7 of 62, no touchdowns. So this was tough, man. They have a really good receiving core over there, and I did talk about this in the pregame, where I feel like where you're going to win this game is between the Seattle offense and the Dallas defense. And while it wasn't, you know, while Seattle was winning the battle early on, the Dallas defense won the war at the very end of the game, and that's what matters, is that It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. That doesn't excuse poor play, though. I'm not trying to sit there and act like that. But still, it is what it is. Shout out to Deron Bland with another great interception, even though we couldn't do anything with it. Let me just see what's going on here. So we did get a sack by Jonathan Hankins, but that was by DJ Dallas. It was like a weird play. Marquise Bell and Deron Bland leading the way with tackles, which is awesome. And then, yeah, I had Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams pretty much all over the goddamn place, so that didn't really help. And Brandon Aubrey, perfect on the day. So great stuff there. So now that the stats are out of the way, I wanted to talk about the ebbs and flow of the game. So the Cowboys were very shell-shocked, to say the least, in the first half because the offense was putting up points. No question about it. They scored on every drive. The problem was that you couldn't stop Seattle on the other side of the goddamn ball. Touchdown after touchdown. And even at the end of the half, like that was they went back to back. Like they scored the touchdown to end half and then went out and scored a touchdown to start. Like you don't do that. Like that is hard to win against because that's a huge momentum killer right there. And it's a huge momentum swing for the other team. But the Cowboys responded. They had a situation where they're down, so they drive down the field. They score a touchdown. Now, there were people that were like, well, Space, they should have gone for two. Here's why I think they didn't go for two. They didn't go for two because it was an indictment on the defense at the moment in time. Because here's how I would envision it. Seattle has not been stopped on offense. If you go for two in that situation and you don't get it, what ends up happening is that if Seattle goes down the field and scores again, then you're in a situation to where, okay, it goes from a 2-point game to a 9-point game. And so I would rather just take the point here, and then if Seattle scores like they did, I can try to go for two on the next go around. You see what I mean? And that's where I loved the decision making there. Now, not everybody saw it that way, and trust me, I completely understand it, and I would acknowledge if you're like, well, Space, they should have gone for two there. I get it. I completely understand. But nah, McCarthy and that team in the Cowboys, they had themselves locked in. They understood the situation for what it was, and then after Seattle scored. Then you had a situation where, okay, you get a turnover, you can't do anything with it. Then Seattle's up 27, or excuse me, they're up 35-30, and then you get a stop, you drive down the field and score, with the pass to Jake Ferguson, you go for two, you get it. Now it's 38-35. Now you need to get another stop. You do get another stop. So then what the hell happens next? Okay, and here's the thing is, like, Seattle understood that the way the game was going is that if they punted, they were not getting the ball back. And so Dallas drives down the field, and people were like, well, why the fuck did they call a pass play on third down? To me, it's very reminiscent. If you go back and you watch, I believe it was the Seattle playoff game from, or no, I'm sorry, the New Orleans playoff game from 2018. It was like an exact same situation where, okay, you go to the end zone to your best receiver, because I've seen that exact same play before. You go to the end zone, you see if you can get a pass interference or a defensive hold, or you get a touchdown, and the game's over. But you don't, and people will be like, well, it was 3rd and 3 space, that doesn't count. And I understand that. To me, I probably would have called a read option if you wanted to keep the ball in Dak's hands, but I think that also was a confidence thing. Because the way that I look at it is at the tail end, your defense is regaining confidence. They're making stops. All right, you know what? I'm going to kick a field goal here. We're going to just try to go for the win here. But if it doesn't work, I trust that my defense can get a stop. And they did. They did. And so that is where a win like this is huge. The way that it happened. Because now the Cowboys have confidence not only offensively that they can win in a shootout, the defense understands that if we get into a shootout, we can get a stop when we need to get a stop. And that's the parallels between this Cowboys team and other Cowboys teams. Now, that doesn't mean the end result's going to be the same or not, but they got the job done. They're 9-3, huge win. You get 10 days of rest before Philadelphia comes to town. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more. So, the other thing, Dak Prescott's in the MVP conversation. In my opinion, it's probably going to be between him and Jalen Hurts. And whatever you feel about Jalen Hurts, all right, whatever. I'm not going to go into depth on that. But Dak Prescott became the second or the first quarterback since Aaron Rodgers won MVP in 2020 to have 6 straight games with 2 touchdown passes or more. Like, that is unbelievable. He is playing football at such a high level to where you can't keep him out of the MVP conversation. People were talking about, well, we haven't beaten a team over 500. We just beat a team over 500 to make them 500. They're in the playoff picture, right? He had signature MVP moments like getting out of the sack to get the first down to set up a field goal opportunity to keep Dallas in the game. Dak Prescott keeping the ball himself to get first downs. Dak Prescott keeping himself calm, cool, and collective, marching the Cowboys down the field to score on pretty much every drive, minus a couple. And that's where we have to look at it for what it is. By the way, every touchdown the Cowboys had was in the red zone, so just keep in mind that. So, what else does Dak Prescott have to do to say that he's the MVP of the league? I think that if they go out, and again, we understand that the assignment is not these individual awards. We get that. We understand that we want the ultimate prize at the end of the season. But you need to be able to play at those levels because, hey, people were saying, well, we need to see Dak Prescott play at this level consistently and in the playoffs. Okay, that's fine. If he continued, like, that's the thing, is that he is playing football at such a high goddamn level that you can't keep him out of the MVP conversation anymore. Not saying he's the front runner, even though it feels like he is starting to pull away with how well he's been playing, leading the league in touchdown passes, being in the top 5 for passing yards, being in the top 3 for every statistical category when it comes to passing, completion percentage, efficiency metrics, you name it. Dak Prescott is playing the quarterback position better than anybody else in the National Football League. And you can't tell me otherwise. Who? Like Jalen Hurts? The only thing that Jalen Hurts doesn't have on Dak Prescott is that he's had multiple games in this stretch where he has not played well in the first half. But sure, he's come alive and won you games. And I'm not taking that away from him. But if you really want to be nitpicky, which a lot of the times these MVP conversations are, Dak Prescott has played well from start to finish in this stretch of games in which he's thrown like 23 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. Like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, this is, listen, I understand that there are going to be plenty of Cowboys fans who don't like Dak Prescott that are going to try and find ways to nitpick. But you can't tell me that this dude is not playing as the best quarterback in the National Football League at this point in time. Of course, it's a week-to-week basis. For all I know, next week Dak Prescott could play bad, and then everybody's, oh, there they are, blah, blah, blah. But not. Like, there's no reason to think that. We won a game where it wasn't pretty. You're going to have that, and if we're going into the playoffs, this felt like a playoff game. It really did. It really felt like this is a playoff-like game in an environment where if you can get shit together, you can strand some wins here. And so I'm so thankful, right, that the Cowboys schedule is where it's at. You have Philadelphia at home. Cool. Regardless of result. Then you have Buffalo and Miami, then Detroit at home, and then you close out with Washington. that is a gauntlet of teams where you are going to get battle tested, and we're going to be sharpening our blades basically before the postseason, regardless of if hypothetically we win the NFC East if we're lucky, or you go on the road as a NFC wild card, and you just have to take care of business on the road. So I don't really have much more to say, guys. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the penalties. I know someone's like, Space, you never mentioned the penalties. I don't want to talk about the penalties in this game because it was shitty on both sides. Like, I've never seen that many flags in a game ever where both teams were called basically 10 times. Like, it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. I think I've gone on for long enough. How about them Cowboys? They win again, and now it's on to Philadelphia. Let's celebrate the win, and then we just move on, all right? So with that, I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much, and have a good one.